Okay, so in today's video, we're going to talk about how to find slope from a table without using a graph. And it's important to remember that slope is the change in y over the change in x. So we're going to be writing slope as a fraction. And remember that this little triangle is the Greek symbol delta. And it means change. Because slope is a rate of change. We're trying to figure out how much something changes. Rate of change. For our first example, we have a table and we are going to look for a pattern. So what I want to look for is, I'm going to start with my X column right here. And we're going to look for a pattern. So from -3 to 0, the change is add 3. So from 0 to 3, the change is add 3. And then from 3 to 6, we are again adding 3. So that means our rate of change for the X column is add 3. So I'm going to put that in the bottom of my fraction. All right, so now looking at the Y column, we're trying to find a pattern here. So I'm looking from 11 to 9. We are going down 2, so -2. We're subtracting 2. From 9 to 7, the change is subtract 2. And then from 7 to 5, we're subtracting 2 again. So there's my pattern, or my rate of change for the y's. I'm going to write that in the top of my fraction. So my slope is -2/3. I'm going to plot my points so that you are able to see what it looks like from a graph point of view. -311 would be up here. It's kind of off the graph. So yes, this, remember every point has an XY coordinate. So this is a point, 0, 9 is a point on a graph. 3, 7 is a point on the line. This goes back to when we were making a table last week. And we were plugging in values for X. But this time we're given the values. 6, 5. If I draw my line, it's not a pretty line, but it's a line, I can do my rise over run. So I rise 1, 2, and I run 1, 2, 3. I rise 1, 2, and I run 1, 2, 3. So our rate of change is correct, and this is a negative slope. Okay, for example 2, we're going to look for our pattern and find the rate of change. So, starting with my x's, our change from 12 to 8 is subtract 4. Our change from 8 to 4 is subtract 4. From 4 to 0, we're subtracting 4. So our change for x is subtract 4. I'm going to put that right in my denominator. So -4 is in my denominator, and now I'm going to find my change for my y values. So for y, from 5 to 10, we're adding 5. From 10 to 15, the change is add 5. And then from 15 to 20, our change is add 5. So our change in y is 5. So I'm going to put that in my numerator. And now our slope is -5/4. For this table, I won't be able to show you that these are all coordinates because if you look at the values, they go off the grid. So just remember that every table of values are coordinates or a solution to an equation. They're on the graph. So I won't be able to show you for this one, but I'll show you for the next example. Okay, so looking at this example, we're going to follow the same thing. We have our slope is the change in y over the change in x. So I'm going to first look at my change of x because it is on top, it's listed first, and I like even numbers so I can easily see my change. So from 2 to 4, the change is adding 2. From 4 to 6, add 2. 6 to 8, we're adding 2. So that means my change of x, and I'll write this lower. So my change in x is 2, and I'm going to write that in my denominator. And then I'm going to find my change in y. So looking at -7 to 0, we're getting larger, so we're adding 7. From 0 to 7, we're adding 7 again. And then from 7 to 14, we're adding 7. So that means my change in y is +7. So I will put that in my numerator, and that means my slope is 7/2. And I will plot the points for this one. So 2, -7 is here. 4, 0 is here. And then 6, 7 is up here. And then 8, 14 goes off my grid. And so remember, these are all coordinates to points. Each one, that's where I'm getting these numbers from. These are all coordinates, x, y coordinates to a point. That's where those numbers are coming from. Just like when we were creating a table ourselves, we now have the table, and we only have to find the change, but I'm showing you how to graph it from there. So now I'm going to find my rise over run. Go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're going to run 1, 2. We're going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and run 2. So this, if you have graph paper or that dry erase board, this is a great way to check your work. You can do the rise over run, and these should be the same. Okay, so now we're going to look at what happens if we have a unique case. So remember, our rate of change, our slope, is the change in y over the change in x. So looking at x, our rate of change for this table goes from -3 to -2. We're getting larger, so it's adding 1. From -2 to -1, we're still getting bigger by adding 1. From -1 to 0, we're still increasing. From 0 to 1, we're adding 1 again. From 1 to 2, we're adding 1. Now, if I look at my y column, what is the change here? From 5 to 5, well, there is no change. No change. So it's 0 change. So if I were to write this as a fraction, my change in y is 0, and my change of x is 1, Well, this is my slope. 0 over 1, which equals 0. And to plot those points, so remember, each one is a coordinate. -3, 5, -2, 5, -1, 5, 0, 5, 1, 5, and 2, 5. Well, here we have a horizontal line. And we've already learned that horizontal lines are 0 slope. Remember Slope Dude? He was on the flat part of the mountain and he said this was 0 fun, so 0 slope. Okay, last example. And slope is the rate of change of y over the change of x. Looking at our change of y, we're going to look at this. So we have from -2 to -1, we're adding 1 because it's getting bigger. From -1 to 0, adding 1. From 0 to 1, adding 1. From 1 to 2, adding 1. And then from 2 to 8 is adding 6, but we don't need to worry about that part right now. We'll still get the same answer. Okay. So looking at our x values, well, what do we notice about this? What is our rate of change? From -1 to -1, well, there's no change. It's 0. So if I were to write this as my fraction, we have the change of y, which is 1, and the change of x, which is 0. Well, remember, you're not allowed to divide by 0. This is when you get an error message in your calculator in math, you're not supposed to divide by 0. So that means this is undefined. And you could say no slope. It's not the same as 0 slope, but no slope or undefined. And to plot these points, I have -1, -2, -1, -1, -1, 0. These are the points I'm looking at. Remember, coordinates are x and y. -1, 1, -1, 2, and -1, 8. So we have a vertical line, which we've already said is undefined. Remember, it's impossible. It makes 0 sense to have multiple different kinds of money in your bank account. Also, another way to remember is Slope Dude was going off the cliff and he said the worst curse word in math possible, undefined.